to do so. Kia ora.
Alfred Naro.
Mr. Chair, I do want to acknowledge Mr. Hone Harawira and his comments, and especially around GI. I want to talk about GI because it's a home I've lived in the area I've lived in for the last 18 years. I know the people well, the community well, and I know the struggles and I know the issues that he talks about. For a lot of those times, while no, I am Mr. Twyford, actually, the fact is that we have worked quite hard for quite a long time in there. Tāmaki transformation that came under the Labour government was started to look at a whole of community perspective. Housing was one of those issues. Housing was one of those issues. Out of that issue, we work collectively with the government agency as a whole of community working together to address these issues. But here's one of the shameful things that the Labour government need to be held to account. They had some of the worst housing stock in the whole of New Zealand. 58% of that area of community of GI, Pamu and Point England were state housing stock. They had some of the worst stock. In other words, under their watch, there was a lack of maintenance, there was a lack of repair. In other words, there was a lack of concern. There was a lack of concern. So for all the talk, let's talk about the action, let's talk about the reality. Nothing was done over 9 years. And the very communities, I can take you to the street, Flanders Street, we can go up there, Ropata, we can name the streets. I'm not sure that Mr. Twyford can name the streets. We can name the streets where the homes and the houses of these families that they had to live in were really shameful. That's what, if you want to talk about government responsibility, that was shameful. So what did this government decide to do? This is what it decided to do. It was time for change. Now, inside of that change, yes, there were difficulties and struggles because for some of those families, they'd been in there for such a long time. But I can say this, a number of the community initiatives are there even at the moment. There's an organisation called Ngā Iwi Katoa, which you've got Monty Cecilia involved in with David Zussman, and there's a collective of community working together with the Tāmaki Regeneration Company to try and address some of the critical concerns that are there. But this is what we're doing as a government to address that. 6,960 new tenancies have been started, 200,000 people in our houses. But Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about some other things that when they were asked and surveyed right across the board in regards to how did they find the service and what it was doing, yes, there were some areas of need, but 76% of them surveyed were satisfied with their house maintenance and the customer services centre. That was not the figure under a Labour government of 9 years. That was not the figure that was there. Mr. Speaker, Hone talked about the fact of the importance of having healthy housing and home insulation. One of the things is that we've had over this period of time 2,000 whole-of-house upgrades. We've spent $190 million to improve the quality of our houses. You see, again, this is a government of action, not just of talk. This is a government that's made a difference to those homes. We've insulated 8,295 homes. In other words, making a difference to the care and concern of the families, even those families that are in Glen Innes as well. Mr. Speaker, 390,000 maintenance actions. We know, again, maintenance and repairs on a number of those homes were quite critical to our families. Mr. Speaker, I also want to talk about social housing. The whole thing around the third-tier sector, the third sector of the housing, what's it called, market that's out there. Now, I can say this. We know that Brian Donnelly, for instance, the New Zealand Housing Foundation, the Salvation Army, Monty Cecilia, a number of these collectors have come together and said this, that this is the right intent, this is a good initiative. We want to see the ability for us to be able to come into that sector to truly make a difference. And here's the difference that they can make, is that they can make a difference because they can meet the needs of those housing issues for their communities in particular, Mr. Speaker. So $2.9 billion for housing to add bedrooms to 3,000 homes, build 500 new homes, complete home installations and repair inside our Housing New Zealand stock. Mr. Speaker, so this is the difference that it's making. We're now starting to hear families that are saying, look, now not only do we have healthy homes, we're homes that are not only be able to, we can access things like health and education. And Mr. Speaker, I do want to just sort of talk about, you know, there's been a concern about some of our families, even in Glen Innes. We had the petition for Pomare that was there, Marae Nui as well. And what we do know is this. I want to commend the new Chief Executive, Glenn Sowry, who's gone out. And even in his first month, he went and visited the homes. He went and visited with the case managers to see what was actually happening on the ground and seeing how that it was making a difference. So here's the difference, because Mr Chris Hipkins was there about 2 or 3 weeks ago in Maraenui, and he celebrated the success that what was happening, they were making a difference to address the issues that were there for that community, Mr Speaker.
Phil Twyford.
Mr Chairman, I want to address the question